This video today we're going to talk about extinction and some causes of extinction and different types of extinction. Extinction is really simply just the end of a species, that they don't exist any longer on the planet. There's no survivors. And this usually will occur when there are not, a species is not able to adapt to the current environment, or if the environment changes, they're not fit for that environment any longer, so they're no longer able to survive in that type of environment. And there's two types that we're going to look at today: background extinction and mass extinction. The first that we're going to look at is called background extinction, and this is a natural process that does take place, we see take place over Earth's history, in which there's a gradual change in the environment, and that oftentimes can lead to a gradual change in the species. And sometimes those species, especially if the populations tend to get smaller, there's less and less genetic variation within that population, so it's not able to adapt to a change in the environment and a change in the environmental conditions. And so as the genetic variation decreases, the species become less adaptable and they're no longer able to survive. And usually species last about 1 to 10 million years long on the planet. We can see this in two different ways. Sometimes small populations, as we talked about, if there's not a lot of genetic variation for survivors to be able to be fit for a new environmental change or the new environment. And in that case, those small populations can be vulnerable to harmful events like floods or fire, small weather changes, things like that. Cheetahs are actually an example of this, unfortunately. There's very little genetic variation in the cheetah population, and so it is very vulnerable, cheetahs, to any sort of genetic disease, or if there's an environmental change that the species is not able to adapt to. Because of the genetic variation, we could see them go extinct. Also with background extinction is just random events, and essentially that's being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Something happens that causes individuals to just unfortunately die, and that makes the population smaller, or it can wipe out an entire population if it's not a very big population of species and it's only in particular areas or a small number of areas. Background extinction is a normal rate of extinction, and it's based on the geological and biological history, and is usually not influenced by human activities. So all of background extinction is just a common process where species eventually become extinct and disappear off the planet. That's very different than what we refer to as mass extinction, when there's lots of species that go extinct at one particular time. And this is a large loss of species, usually in a short geological time period. When we say a short geological time period, we mean not just a year or two, sometimes that's short, but usually over decades or even centuries. Lots of years in our lifespan, but in terms of Earth's lifespan, very few years. About 90% of all the organisms that have existed on the planet are now extinct. A good example of a mass extinction would be like the dinosaurs. When they went extinct about 65 million years ago, that would be an example of a mass extinction. And there's about 5 major recorded mass extinctions on the planet, with the vast majority of species have become extinct, or gone extinct, for a variety of different causes. Some of those ways, some of the causes of mass extinction, some of the ways that species can go extinct through this would be big climate changes. There's a sudden and profound change in the temperature in either direction, either getting a lot warmer or a lot cooler. That can have a big effect. Geological events, volcanic eruption is a good example of this. Not only does it create air pollution, but it also can block sunlight. And if there's not enough sunlight for plants to be able to photosynthesize and produce energy, then other organisms that depend on the plants for food are not going to be able to survive, and animals that then depend on those animals or organisms are not going to be able to survive, so it causes a kind of a chain reaction event. Also associated with geological events is increase or decrease in sea levels, and this could also be tied to changes in climate, but changes in sea levels can have big effects as well. Meteorites, like if there was a large meteorite or asteroid that crashed from space It can have a lot of really negative impacts. It could change the climate very quickly. Most likely it would probably cause a lot of volcanic eruptions, which would then block sunlight, could cause a tsunami. In the direct impact area, it could obviously cause all kinds of damage and destruction. So that could have a big effect. And then also human impacts. We're finding more and more that humans can impact species. Overhunting is one of those examples. Humans can have impacts on climate. And then also habitat loss through the destruction of habitats. A good example of this, unfortunately, is expansion of farming lands or for crop production, cutting down rainforest or other areas that organisms live in can have some destructive effects, not only in removing the environment, but then also eliminating the environment that those organisms would be found in. In both situations, changes in the environment, kind of the bottom line is that changes in the environment can have profound effects on species. It can cause species to go extinct, and that might be a gradual process or it could be a very quick process in which there are a lot of species that go extinct on the planet at the same time. So in this, just to recap, looking at the two different ways that species can go extinct on the planet.